we are actually starting a brand new series this week called Summer Hits. And we're going to be using some popular songs as a jumping off point to dive into God's Word, to see what we think He is trying to teach us. And I just want to thank every single person for being here today, because I know summer can kind of get crazy. It's one of those times where maybe the vacation increases and the relaxation increases, but also the rest of your schedule gets really, really busy as well. So I want to thank all of you guys for continuing to prioritize your faith and growing in your faith. I want to extend a special welcome to our online guests as well. We love you guys. And so we just heard the song, "You Can Go Your Own Way" by Fleetwood Mac. It's one of their big songs in the late 70s. And every time you hear of Fleetwood Mac, who is the most popular person in Fleetwood Mac? Stevie Nicks. All the people under 40 are like, who? Correct answer. But it's Stevie Nicks, right? I'm in that group too. I'm like, what's a Stevie Nicks? I don't know. But even though she's the most popular person of Fleetwood Mac, she wrote most of the songs, this song was actually not written by her. It was actually written and performed by their guitar player, Lindsey Buckingham. So we got a little picture of him. So Lindsey is the guy to the right with the guitar with the amazing beard and the amazing hair that just screams 70s, right? And then Stevie is the really grumpy one behind him. You're going to understand why she's so grumpy in just a second, okay? So Stevie and Lindsey they met in high school, and they started dating shortly after. As they grew up, they joined Fleetwood Mac, but a couple years went by, and their relationship actually deteriorated. And so Lindsey wrote "You Can Go Your Own Way" as a breakup song about him and Stevie, and in the most passive-aggressive, awkward situation, then forced Stevie to sing on this song, even though she objected to a lot of the lyrics that were written about her. So that's why she looks so grumpy. So this is a breakup song sung by two people who broke up. Kind of weird, right? Like, that's kind of strange. But today, we're going to read a story from the book of Genesis about two people whose relationship is completely broken by the end of the story. It's not a romantic relationship or anything like that. It's actually the story of two brothers who both make poor choices over something as small and insignificant of a bowl of soup. So if you have your Bibles, I would love for you to turn to Genesis chapter 25, either your physical Bible or on the app on your phone. If you don't have either one of those, every single verse I read today is going to be up on the screens for you to follow along. We're going to be diving into the story of Jacob and Esau. And even though we're only 25 chapters into the Bible, a ton has happened up to this point. So we see the first 3 chapters are basically the creation of mankind, the creation of earth, but then only 3 chapters in, mankind just messes it all up. And there's this separation between God and mankind. And it goes on to say, basically, the world became more and more wicked. And just by Genesis chapter 6, the world and man has become so evil, it's become so wicked, that it actually says that God regrets making man because of how evil he has become. And so he actually starts over. He sends a huge flood, essentially starting the whole thing over. And a couple chapters later, we are introduced to a man named Abraham. And Abraham is chosen to be the father of God's great nation, the nation of Israel. And God begins to bless Abraham, and he blesses him by his offspring. He says, your children, your great-grandchildren, your great-great-grandchildren, they will be as numerous as the stars in the sky. They will be as numerous as the sand on the shore. And God not only uses Abraham to bless the nation of Israel, he wants to use the nation of Israel to bless the rest of the world as well. And one of the children that Abraham has, his name is Isaac. And Isaac is a faithful follower of God, and he marries a woman named Rebekah. But up until this point of the story, they actually have no children. They have no offspring. So they're kind of like, hey, what's going on here, God? You said you were going to bless my father with children, and that's me, but what about grandchildren? What about great-grandchildren? We kind of got to keep this going a little bit, right? And so in Genesis chapter 25, verse 21, it says this: Isaac prayed to the Lord on behalf of his wife because she was childless. The Lord answered his prayer, and his wife Rebekah became pregnant. So Isaac is crying out to God, basically saying, hey, I thought we were supposed to be blessed with children, but we don't have any children. But in a classic case of be careful what you wish for, God actually grants them their wish. And it says this in the very next sentence. The babies jostled each other within her. And she said, "Why is this happening to me?" So she went to inquire of the Lord. So it says the babies, we're going to find out in just a couple chapters that she's actually pregnant with twins. So we went from 0 to 100 real quick, right? Like the first pregnancy, boom, you got twins right there. And right from the get-go, she's a little concerned about what's going on. She's feeling maybe these aren't regular pregnancy pains. These aren't kind of normal things. Basically, the babies are fighting within her womb. They're having an old school steel cage UFC fight. Like people are dropping from the top rope or dropping the elbow on them. It's getting wild in there, okay? And so she basically asked the Lord something you have all prayed before. She basically says, "Dear Jesus, why are my children fighting so much?" Y'all have prayed that same prayer, right? Every single one of us. Maybe you prayed that same prayer this week. It was the first week of summer vacation. They lasted all of 17 minutes before they started fighting, right? And you say, "Dear Jesus, why are my children the way they are?" Like that's what she's going on right here, okay? Rebecca doesn't understand what's happening. So she cries out to God, she prays to God, and God says this in verse 23. The Lord said to her, "Two nations are in your womb, and two peoples from within you will be separated. One people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger." So God's actually doing a little bit of foreshadowing right here about what's going to happen later in life. But if you notice, God doesn't try to calm her nerves right here. He doesn't say, "Oh, don't worry, the pregnancy is going to be a little rough, but it's going to be smooth sailing after that." No, he says, "Buckle up, lady. This is going to be an adventure, all right? Like you're not ready for all of this." He basically is kind of laying the groundwork for how crazy this is going to be. And so it comes for the boys to be born, and here's what it says. When the time came for her to give birth, there were twin boys in her womb. The first to come out was red, and his whole body was like a hairy garment, so they named him Esau. After this, his brother came out with his hand grasping Esau's heel, and so he was named Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when Rebekah gave birth to them. Okay, so there's a couple things happening right in that small little passage right there. The first thing, the boys are born. But notice what the Bible is doing right here, okay? It's taking some interesting choices in how it gives description and how it gives details in this story. Now, hear me out on this. The Bible oftentimes isn't all that concerned with details. It just isn't. And that's not to say that details don't matter. That's not to say that the Bible is trying to hide something. That's not it at all. What the Bible is trying to do is oftentimes the Bible is trying to tell a bigger story. And so it doesn't want to get bogged down in all the small little details, all those little things, because it doesn't want you to get bogged down in all those little details. Because there's a bigger story being told. All that to say, when the Bible goes out of its way to give those small details, it's usually for one or of two reasons. First reason is it's trying to communicate something specific to us. It's basically trying to connect to a bigger story. The second reason is because a detail is too obvious to ignore. This is most evident in the New Testament where it talks about Zacchaeus being really short. It's basically saying like, oh, he's not like 5'8" or 5'7". No, dude was up to my knees probably. Like he was tiny, okay? And the Bible is actually doing both things in this story right here for each boy. The first detail it gives about Esau and how hairy this baby truly is. And so when the Bible goes out of its way to say this baby is hairy, this baby is hairy, okay? I want you to picture a red shag carpet in human form. I want you to picture 7 pounds, 11 ounces of Santa's thick red coat. Like that's how hairy this baby truly is. But it also gives a detail of trying to tell a bigger story about Jacob. It says that Jacob was holding on to Esau's heel as they were being born, showing us right from the beginning, there's not unity between these boys. There's fighting going on between these boys, and there will always be fighting. And Jacob is trying to acquire what Esau has. And that's no more obvious than the contrast it begins to set up in this next passage. Verse 27. The boys grew up, and Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the open country, while Jacob was content to stay at home among the tents. Isaac, who had a taste for wild game, loved Esau, but Rebekah loved Jacob. So the Bible's starting to set up this tension. It's starting to set up this contrast where basically Esau is this hunter, this gatherer. He's always outside. He just lives outside. He is hunting. And because of this, his father his father Isaac loves him more. And then it sets up the contrast between Esau and Jacob, where Jacob is not always outside. He is not the hunter. He is a homebody. He is always staying at home, doing things around the house. And because of that, his mother, Rebekah, loves him more. But here's where the story gets interesting and where the conflict kind of comes to a boiling point. Verse 29. Once, when Jacob was cooking some stew, Esau came in from the open country, famished. He said to Jacob, "Quick, let me have some of that red stew. I'm famished." Jacob replied, "First, sell me your birthright." Okay, so Esau comes in from a long day of hunting. He sees that Jacob is making some soup, making some stew, and he's basically like, "Hey, give me a bowl of that. I want some of that. It's been a long day. I've been out hunting all day. I need some of that." And if you actually kind of put this passage together and the passage that we just read, it actually kind of makes sense. Because what do we know about Jacob and Esau at this point? Esau is the hunter-gatherer. Jacob is the one that stays home. And so when Esau is coming home, seeing the things that Jacob is cooking, it's probably the things that Esau actually killed and brought back, right? Basically saying, hey, I bring the ingredients, you cook the ingredients, and then we share. That seems like a totally fair trade. Without the ingredients, I have nothing to cook. And without the cook, these are just raw ingredients. I can't do anything with this. And so it seems like they just are kind of have this agreement to share. But Jacob makes a ridiculous request of Esau to give him a bowl of soup. He says, "Sell me your birthright." And most of you are thinking, what in the world is a birthright and what is happening right here? Okay, so a birthright is huge in biblical times. The birthright is given to the firstborn son. Now remember, Jacob and Esau are twins, but who was born first? Esau was born first. Even though Jacob was born only seconds afterwards, Esau is the firstborn son, therefore he has the birthright. And the birthright gives us three specific things: double inheritance, power, blessing. Let me explain that. Okay, I need a set of siblings, preferably brothers. Do I have a set of siblings, brothers right here? You could call it. I promise I won't make you do anything embarrassing, okay? No, you guys know I'm not, the parents are like calling them out right now, okay? It's gonna work out really well for one of you. Can I invite you guys up on stage real quick? Come on. Oh yeah, thank you. I appreciate you. It's Father's Day. This is your dad's present, okay? You have to take back everything they give you today, all right? Them's the rules. Oh, they give that shirt? Sir, please don't take your shirt off in this service. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you. All right, come on up. Okay, so who is the oldest? Oh, all right. Do you have any other siblings? No? God bless you guys. All the other people had other siblings, and I had to act like they didn't exist, and because math is hard for me. Okay, so you are the oldest sibling. Therefore, you would have the birthright. So the first thing you get in a birthright is called double inheritance. Now, let me give you an example. Say your lovely parents, they're lovely. I'm not trying to wish this upon you, okay? But your lovely parents, they pass away, and they leave you an estate worth $6 million. Whew, mom and dad are loaded. Let's go, all right? So there's two siblings. What would we think is the fair way to split up $6 million? What do you guys think? 50-50, right? You get $3 million, you get $3 million. Wrong. That's not how this works, okay? So the double inheritance means you get double whatever he gets. So that 6 million, that with 3 million and 3 million, you get 4 million, you get 2 million. So notice how his increased at the cost of you. Now, you're probably still not all that mad. You just got $2 million, right? You're like, okay, that's totally fine. But you get double whatever he gets, no matter what, just for being born. He literally did nothing in all of this. It's very upsetting, I know, okay? First thing, double inheritance. Second thing, you get power. Here's what it means why you get power. You get power over all family disputes. You inherit all of your parents' responsibilities and titles and possessions, and also you can move the entire family whenever you want because you have ultimate authority over all of the family. So let's say he wants to move to Nebraska and you're like, I don't like corn. Suck it up, Buttercup. We're moving to Nebraska, all right? Like that's how it worked. He would say jump and you would say how high. That is the power he has. You're way interested in this one, right? You're like, dude, sign me up for this one, okay? So you get double inheritance and you get power. The third thing you get a blessing. So actually, you would get a blessing from the Father that would actually kind of be from God himself. They would pray a blessing over you, a blessing of prosperity, a blessing of abundance, and you would literally have God's blessing over your life, not over his life. So you get double inheritance, you get power, and you get blessing, all for being the firstborn son, and you get absolutely nothing. I'm sorry. Them's the rules. Don't worry about it. So when Esau walks in and says, hey, I want a bowl of soup, and Jacob says, sell me your birthright. I'm sorry, what did you just say? You want me to sell me my birthright? You want me to sell you the double inheritance, the power, and the blessing for a bowl of soup? You are insane. There's no possible way Esau would ever consider this a fair trade, right? You would never sell. If you truly had the birthright, there is no way you would sell all that for a bowl of soup, right? Like, let's be real. You probably wouldn't sell it just because of the power of like, I can lord power over my brother at all times. Like, that is the number one thing. Let's be real. And so there's no way you would ever take this deal, right? The very next passage, Genesis 25:32. Look, I'm about to die, said Esau. What good is a birthright to me? And we start to see the wheels turning of Esau, seriously considering selling the birthright, selling the double inheritance, selling the power, selling the blessing for a bowl of soup. You guys can have a seat. Thank you guys so much. Give them a hand, give them a round. We're going to come back to this sentence in just a second, but because I don't want to skip over it, because this sentence right here, what Esau says, and those couple of words, those two sentences right there, that is the crux of this message. That is the idea that I want all of you to pull away from. But before we come back to it, I want to finish off the story. Here's what it says, Genesis chapter 25, verse 33. But Jacob said, swear to me first. So he swore an oath to him, selling his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau some bread and some lentil stew. He ate and drank, got up and left. So Esau despised his birthright. So Esau sells the double inheritance. He sells the power. He sells the blessing. For what? For a bowl of soup. I want to go back to that sentence in verse 32 where it says, look, I'm about to die, Esau said. What good is a birthright to me? This sentence right here is what you and I do every single day. This sentence right here is a perfect example of the sin in our life. Esau makes an incredibly short-sighted decision, a decision that he would later go on to regret, and he admits that he regret, that he wishes he could take back. He makes a choice that makes no sense to us whatsoever. We would never make this trade in a million years, but we also do it every single day. Look, I'm about to die. What good is a birthright to me is the perfect encapsulation of what sin does in our life. It's what we do every single day. You see, sin lies to us in two very specific ways. And we see it right here from this passage. The first way sin lies to us, sin exaggerates the present. Esau came in from a long day of hunting, right? He was out, maybe he got up really early that morning, maybe he got back really late. He is absolutely starving in this moment. And if you notice, he doesn't start off with saying he's going to die. He starts off with saying what? I'm hungry. He actually says, I'm famished, which is a little dramatic, but whatever, it's fine. He says, I'm famished. I'm really hungry. But then he kind of ups the game. He makes it a little more exaggerated. He makes it a little more dramatic by saying he's going to die. Is he going to die? No. Let's be real. All of us do this though, right? Like, if it's like 11:45, 12 o'clock, like, basically right now, all right, and I haven't had lunch yet, I start to get a little hangry, a little grumpy, all right? And I've had it in situation before with my wife or with people I'm hanging out with, and I just say, if I don't eat within the next 5 minutes, I will die. Will I actually die? No, but it kind of feels like that, right? Because it felt like that in the moment, even though it's simply not true. That's exactly what sin does in the moment. It exaggerates the present, and it makes the present a bigger deal than it actually should be. And when it exaggerates it, then sin looks more enticing. It looks like it's worth it, and we begin to justify it in our hearts and our mind. Because we think, man, the thing right in front of me, the thing that's happening right now is the biggest deal in the world, when maybe it actually isn't. And maybe we need to have a different perspective because we're so close to the sin. We only see the problem in front of us, and it feels like it just completely overwhelms us. And it's the only thing we desire. We think it's right, and we think it's the only way. The book of Proverbs actually warns us of this very idea in Proverbs chapter 14, verse 12, where it says, "There is a way that appears to be right, but in the end, it leads to death." You see, Esau thought what he was doing was right, but in the end, it cost him. How many times has that happened to you and me? We thought it was right in the moment because that moment felt so important. That moment felt so immediate, and we focus only on the temporary, only on the things that feel good in the moment, not realizing the damage that's going to be done when we make that choice. And James is talking about sin and temptation when he writes this in James chapter 1. He says, "Then, after desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin. And sin, when it is full grown, gives birth to death." We've all seen this happen. We had a desire in the moment. We thought it would feel good in the moment. It was just a temporary thing, but it led to sin, which led to death. And maybe it was the death of a relationship. Maybe it was the death of an opportunity. Maybe it was the death of trust between you and someone else. Or maybe it was just separation between you and God. You see, sin lies to us in two very specific ways. It exaggerates the present, and sin also devalues the future. What does Esau say in this second part of it? He says, "What good is a birthright to me?" He's actually devaluing the value of the birthright. And in fairness to Esau, when the father is still alive, the birthright has very little value. Because the father is still alive, I don't get the double inheritance because he still has the money. When the father is still alive, I don't have the power because my father still has the power. When my father is still alive, I don't get the blessing because he gives me the blessing right before he's going to die. The blessing is actually on my father, and then when he dies, that blessing transfers over to me. So in the moment, the birthright actually has very little value. But in the future, it's priceless, right? In the future, it has a ton of value. But he's so caught up in the exaggeration of the present that he can't see the long-term repercussions of his actions. And this happens with the sin in our life. What we thought we were doing wasn't a big deal. We thought we had it under control. We thought that this relationship wouldn't affect anything, but it ended up destroying everything. And we read this story and we think, how can Esau be so stupid, right? How can he be so short-sighted? How can he trade his birthright for a bowl of soup? But you and I do the same thing every single day. We trade our marriage because of a feeling. We sacrifice our reputation for a one-time decision. Some of us in this room are throwing away our marriage because something we are feeling right here and right now. And let me be clear about that. Your feelings might be valid. Just like when Esau stepped into the room, he had a valid feeling of feeling hungry. He had a valid feeling of being tired. But the problem arose when he let those feelings run rampant in his life. And that feeling of hunger actually tricked him into feeling like he was dying. And so he allowed a temporary feeling to destroy his future. For what? For a bowl of soup. And my question for all of us today, and it's a strange question, I'm not going to lie to you, but I think it actually has a lot of relevance for each and every one of us. What is your bowl of soup? What is the thing that you are throwing everything away for? For some of you, it's an affair that you're having. You are throwing away your marriage because of it. For some of you, you are doing questionable things at work. You are stealing from the company. You are not being trustworthy where you work. And you are throwing your career away because of it. For some of you, it's an addiction. You're addicted to alcohol, to drugs, to gambling, to pornography. And you are throwing away the trustworthiness and the trust of someone else that loves and cares for you. For others of us, we are trading away our relationship with God, trading away the relationship with the creator of the universe, with the God that loves us, with the God that has sacrificed everything for us. For what? For a temporary feeling. You are trading your birthright for a bowl of soup. You are giving up being a child of God to being a slave to a sin. You are trading your future for something temporary. A couple chapters later in Genesis, it tells us that Jacob actually tricks their father Isaac into giving him the blessing. And Esau is furious. Even though Esau created this situation, even though Esau's sin, Esau's short-sightedness created this whole scenario, and he caused all of this. And Genesis chapter 27, verse 41 says this: Esau held a grudge against Jacob because of the blessing of his father that had given him. He said to himself, "The days of mourning for my father are near. Then I will kill my brother Jacob." Jacob kind of gets tipped off that Esau says this, and so he flees. He runs away. He is scared for his life. And the rest of Jacob's, almost the majority of the rest of Jacob's life, it is running away from Esau. And Esau and Jacob's relationship is broken. Jacob's deception and Esau's feelings broke their relationship. Sin breaks relationships as well. Some of you have experienced this. Some of you are experiencing this right now. For some of you, you are in the middle of that brokenness, and you're asking yourself, is there any hope for me? I know my sin has messed things up, or I know my spouse's sin has messed things up. I know that the sins of my parents have broken our relationship. What can I do right here and right now? Well, if sin exaggerates the present, and if sin devalues the future, what it's doing right there, it's distorting our perspective. And it's time for us to take that perspective back. It's time for us to change our perspective. Paul writes about this in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, where he says, "So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. Since what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal." So often you and I focus on just the temporary, the things that are right in front of our face, only the feelings in that moment, and God is calling us to so much more than that. And I know that's easier said than done, because we can only see the temporary things. We can only see the things that are right in front of us. But those things that we can physically see, those are the things that will pass away. Those are the things that are not eternal. Those are the things that are not of God. The unseen things, those are the things that are eternal. Those are the things that bring life. Those are the things that we should be focusing on. Paul writes a book, a letter to the church in Colossae, where he says this in Colossians chapter 3. He says, "Set your minds on the things above, not on earthly things." You see, our perspective needs to change. And that mindset shift, that can make all the change in the world, not focusing on the things that are only in front of us, not focusing on the feelings in the moment, but focusing on the God of the universe. Will you change your mindset today, though? Will you still allow sin to exaggerate the present and to devalue the future? Or is it time for a change? Some of you are in the middle of brokenness right now. Maybe you are feeling the effects of someone else's sin, or you are dealing with the fallout of your own choices. If that's you, I want to actually challenge you to come back next week. Because next week, we're going to read the end of the story of Jacob and Esau. And I'm going to be unpacking what that kind of looks like. Because right now, in this moment, in Genesis chapter 27, where Esau says, I'm going to kill my brother, it feels like their relationship is forever broken. And a lot of you are probably sitting in that same spot right now. Maybe you haven't had a death threat or anything crazy like that, but you're saying to yourself, this relationship between me and my spouse, it feels forever broken. This relationship between a friend, it feels broken. This relationship between a parent, it feels forever broken. And I want to tell you, it isn't. Because we can submit to a God that makes all things new. And we can serve a God that makes the impossible possible. And next week, we're going to unpack the story and the reuniting of Jacob and Esau. But I want to tell you, and I want to warn you, the forgiveness doesn't happen right away. The restoration doesn't happen right away. Years go by between Jacob and Esau actually talking again. It doesn't happen next week. It doesn't happen next month. It doesn't even happen a year later. Almost 20 years go by between when Esau says, I'm going to kill my brother, and then they're brought back together. And that might be the same for you. You might be sitting in that moment right now where it's been years, it's been decades since a relationship has been restored, since a brokenness has been restored. But I believe God can do all things. And He wants to restore those relationships. He wants to put back together what sin broke in the first place. And I believe that God can provide redemption to any story and to any relationship. But that redemption starts with us recognizing that our sin broke it in the first place, that our sin has broken our relationships, and that God can put those things back together. But it takes submission to Him. It takes us turning back to God. Will you do that today? Will you make that choice today? Will you turn to Him today? Because I believe your story is not over. It is not done. It has not been written and finalized yet. God can do the impossible. But I don't want you to sell your future because of a temporary feeling. God has something so much greater for you planned than that. So I don't know what decision you need to make today. In just a second, we're going to have pastors and leaders up here, and they want to pray for you. They want to encourage you. They want to do everything they can to get you right with God. And maybe for some of you, you need to step out of that sin that has deceived you, that sin that has warped your perspective. And maybe that's time for you to say, look, I'm tired of this bowl of soup that I think is going to satisfy, but I'm giving up everything else. And I want to lay that down. For some of you, you just need prayer. The choices of other people has broken this relationship, and I don't know how to start. I don't know how to provide forgiveness. If that's you, I'd love for you to pray, but also come back next week. Some of you need to step out of that sin and walk towards God for the first time. And maybe that's a choice of baptism. Saying, God, I'm surrendering everything to you today because I'm tired of the bowl of soup that I have. I'm tired of being a slave to sin. I want to be a child of God once again. Whatever your choice is, whatever your decision is, I pray that you would come forward. Let's stand and let's sing.